Good morning, good evening, and hello everyone to this reading comprehension webinar. My name is Payal Tanton and I will be your host today. With me I have Sandeep, who is our lead GMAT strategy expert. So he will also be supporting us in this session. All right, so I welcome everyone to reading comprehension webinar. So in order to make sure that you are prepared to a certain degree to get the maximum from this webinar, we share this content with you, which is available in your free trial. So I hope that everyone did get a chance to go through main point concept files 1 and 2. If you haven't gone through them, you would still be able to understand and follow me along in this session. But definitely, I would strongly recommend that after the session, log into your e-GMAT free trial so that you can go through this content over here. And you'll find plenty of other free content available in your free trial. Now, every weekend we conduct webinars on Saturdays and Sundays. So tomorrow, in fact, we have GMAT Quant workshop scheduled, same time on Sunday. If you are already preparing for Quant, or if you are resuming your preparation, and if you just want to know, okay, where am I at? Where do I need to focus my energy? Then definitely come and attend this Quant workshop, because it's going to give you a precise idea about your subsectional abilities, your process skills, and your conceptual gaps. So definitely register for that, and you can register by clicking on this button. Critical reasoning, pre-thinking, is a very, very important core skill that you need to have in order to ace critical reasoning questions. So definitely, if you are facing issues with critical reasoning, if you get stuck with, let's say, two choices and it's very difficult for you to discern between them, then definitely attend critical reasoning webinar that's scheduled for next Saturday. And you can again register for it by clicking this button. So I'm going to leave these two on here in case you haven't registered for them. Definitely do register for them by clicking the button here. Now, if you haven't as yet put in your responses for this poll, when do you plan to take the test, I would highly recommend that you do that right now. Again, it just helps me tweak the manner in which I conduct this session. Once I look at, okay, where does the target segment, so what's the composition of the class? So, surprisingly, the two largest segments are two ends of the spectrum. 28%, so about 28% of the class is taking the test within the next 15 days, and then I have another 27% of the class that's taking the test after 2 months. And then we have pretty consistent distribution for the other segments. Now, what that tells me is that you guys are preparing right now for your round two. Round 2 is right around the corner, so you want to take the test before that. So again, that's absolutely fine. If you are both the segments, in fact, all the segments will be able to benefit from this session, because reading comprehension is one of the easier subsections to master. There are very few concepts. It's more of strategy that you need to understand, and that's what we're going to be focusing on in this session. Okay, so again, you're at the right place at the right time. There is no wrong time for taking a look at your strategy and determining what is it that you need to tweak, or what is it that's working. You know, both positive reinforcement that yes, I'm headed in the right direction, I'm doing the right things, and a constructive feedback is important, are important at this stage. Okay, so that you can take the right decisions for your GMAT prep. All right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the presentation pane, and it's going to take a couple of minutes for the layout to get adjusted at your end. So when you do see how do you ace reading comprehension, I want you to click on yes. So if you can see how do you ace reading comprehension on your screen, please click on yes. All right, so the screen has stabilized at your end. Okay, so let's get right into it. Now, what's your target GMAT score? And let me get a poll for that. Give me 1 second. There you go. What's your target GMAT score? All right. So about half, it's an even split. Half of the class is targeting 730 or higher. The remaining half is targeting 720 or lower. Okay, 660 to 720 to be precise. Now, one thing that I will tell you is that, you should aim for a score of 730 or higher, and I'm going to explain why that is the case. I'm going to identify 3 reasons. I'm not going to go into the details of those, but I'll definitely share material with you so that you can understand why is it that you need to score. You should aim for a score of 730. Now, aiming for a score of 730, I mean, if your target score is 730, you definitely need to be very, very persistent and very organized in the manner in which you prepare for the test. Okay, and that requires hard work. Okay, I will say that definitely. You are working. All of us are working. Most of us are working professionals here. We have our families, our personal commitments. So GMAT is another project on an already filled up plate. So definitely taking the time out would require some sacrifices. So if you know why is it that you're making those sacrifices, doing that activity is going to become a little more comfortable for you, right? So that's where I'm going to just highlight 3 reasons why you should score a 730 and why you should be ready to make those sacrifices and why that struggle is worth it. First and foremost is top B schools now require more or less a score of 730. Again, you can look at the median scores of the top B schools. They have been steadily increasing, and this year they are more than they are at that high level right now, averaging about 730. The second point here, so if your target is to get into those top B schools such that your 2-year investment is really worth it, you can get the maximum returns from it, then definitely targeting that 730 is very, very important. Second reason, $350 million of scholarships are awarded every year, and 50% of those go to students who score 730 or higher. So if you do want, and that's a redundant question, everyone wants a scholarship, right? The financial burden of it, of doing an MBA, really is pretty high. So scholarship is the need of the hour. So definitely for that scholarship, you should aim for a 730 or higher score. Okay. The third thing, and that's something which a number of people don't realize, it is really the difference in the total earnings over the 10-year period between 2 different segments, between top B schools and non-top B schools. That difference has been higher than ever, which means that the salaries that typically people earn after graduating from top B schools versus the salaries that they earn after graduating from non-top B schools, that difference has been the maximum ever. So it's really worth your while over the long term to make sure that you get into those top B schools. And again, that goes back to our first reason over here, that you should that the top B schools require a score of 730. So that's the reason. So this again feeds back into your first point, right? So again, 30-point difference. And why am I saying 30-point difference? I'm trying to motivate people who are right now targeting the 700, right, or 700 or lower. You bump your score up 30 additional points from 700 to 730, and you stand a chance to gain so much more output from it. Right? So definitely definitely consider that. And again, these are high-level points. We have detailed articles on it, and I'm going to share those articles with you by the end, towards the end of the session. Okay. All right. So now let's talk about, okay, if your score is really, if you are targeting, or if you want to target that 730, then what should be your target RC ability? And the answer for that question really is that 90 percentile. You should aim for a 90 percentile ability in RC, right? Now, aiming for a 90 percentile ability, that is what does 90 percentile mean? It doesn't mean that you get 90% of questions correct, right? 90 percentile means that you are top of your class. You are in that top 10% of students who appear for the test, which means that you really need to have a very, very solid strategy to approach reading comprehension, okay? Now, tell me, how many of you are scared of reading comprehension? Press yes or no. Press yes if you are scared of reading comprehension. Press no if reading comprehension is something that you absolutely love doing. So, majority of you, 75% of the class, is scared of reading comprehension. Why is that? What scares you about reading comprehension? The first two responses are time, then long passages, not a fast reader. So again, time. Time, long reading passages, time to read and take in the idea, unknown words, long and boring passages takes too much time. So time management. Okay, so a lot of answer choices are close. So maximum number of responses are around the fact that the very nature of reading comprehension, that it's lengthy. There are dense passages, a lot of reading to be done, and because of the time nature of the test, you feel that it's really too much for you to handle. Now tell me one thing. Would you have loved reading comprehension if you didn't have the pressure of time? Tell me that, yes, no? How many of you would have loved reading comprehension if time were not an issue? I mean, the passages will still be long and boring, but how many of you would have loved it if time was not an issue? Okay, so 75% of you would have loved it if timing were not an issue. All right, which means that boring passages don't get in the way. All right, so now tell me, how do you approach reading comprehension today? How do you solve reading comprehension passages today? What's your strategy for that? And as you guys type in, I'm going to write that down over here. Skim and answer, reading fast. So I see reading fast. Then skim through the passage in 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes. Read fast, read questions, skim again. Okay. Read fast, skimming every paragraph. Now, how many of you read fast? Or how many of you believe, and let me reframe my question. How many of you believe that your strategy involves reading the passage fast to get some pointers from it, then look at the question, and then come back to the passage? How many of you follow that strategy? Read it fast, you know, get some level of idea, and then skim through look at the question and then come back. Okay, that's surprising. Only 38% of you. Whereas over here, when I asked you the question, there were so many. Most of it was really just reading fast, skimming through the passage. All right. Okay, so that's fair enough. Tell me another thing. Do you need to understand RC passage to at least 90% level? Everything that's written in the passage, you need to get to that at least 90% understanding in order to solve RC passages. How many of you believe that? Yeah? That you need to understand at least 90% of the passage in order to effectively answer questions. 60% of you believe that. Okay. As we discuss this, okay, my hope is that all of you would believe in this, that you need to get to that 90%, even that 100% understanding of the passage in order to approach, in order to be able to solve RC questions properly. Okay, so let's carry through with this. Okay, so that's the question here. What level of understanding of passage do you have today before you start answering questions? So tell me that. Let's see, do I have a poll for that or no? Today when you answer questions, what level of understanding? Actually, I do have a poll here. Let's get more quantifiable. So between 50 and 75 is the largest segment. So 50 and 75 is 58% of class. Okay. Complete understanding is just 1% today. Okay. All right. Sounds good. Now, technically, you need to have, as I said, ideally and actually, in order to get to that 90 percentile. Remember, we are aiming for that 90 percentile target score, right? If you have to be amongst the 10%, top 10% of all the GMAT test takers, then you need to have 100% understanding of the entire passage before you start answering questions. Okay, I can relax the limit to maybe 90%, but no less than that. Okay. And that is what my goal today is. My goal is to help you get to that level. And how would I do that? The first thing that I want to explain to you is, or guide you towards, is how do you get the maximum from the passage. Okay. And for that, I'm going to introduce reading strategies. I'm going to demonstrate these reading strategies through 2 small passages, and then we're going to solve 1 full-length question to understand that. Okay. The second thing is, how is it that you utilize this information to answer questions? Once you have that, once you apply the reading strategies and you get that 100% understanding of the passage, how do you utilize that information to answer questions? That's something which I'm going to demonstrate through 1 main point question and then through an inference question. And then at the end, we're going to apply this method on a full-length GMAT RC passage, and this is an official passage. I'm going to demonstrate how do you apply reading strategies on a full-length passage, and then how do you solve questions. Okay, and towards the end, we're going to wrap it all up with a study plan, with a very concrete study plan for reading comprehension. Okay, so I have a question here. My mind freezes when I see a comprehension passage and I don't feel like studying the entire passage. Please suggest a way out, and that's leading into my next slide here. So we'll talk about that. Now, just a certain housekeeping announcement here. The questions that I ask you, please put the answers to those questions in the polls, in the short answer poll, or in the multiple choice polls that I give you. The questions that you have from me or from Sandeep, please put those questions in the Q&A pod. I can't promise that I can get to all the questions in the Q&A pod, but I'll try to. Wherever the question fits what I'm talking about in this session, I'm going to definitely take up those questions. All the other questions will be answered by Sandeep. So definitely any question that you have, maybe even if it's not pertinent to reading comprehension, any question with regards to your preparation, put those in the Q&A pod so that Sandeep can answer. Okay, but any of my questions, the responses to those should go in the short answer polls or in the polls that I give you. All right, so let's get to our reading strategies. The first and the foremost strategy, I won't even say it's a strategy, it is something that you have to prepare yourself for. It's the attitude, your attitude towards reading comprehension. Today, that attitude is of that you're scared of reading comprehension, you get bored of it, you just don't like the sound of reading comprehension. That needs to change. Okay, that has to change if you want to prepare yourself to apply reading strategies, because applying one of the prerequisites of being able to, effectively applying the reading strategies is the right attitude towards reading comprehension. And I can tell you what the right attitude is. I can give you certain pointers how to get that right attitude, but it's completely up to you. How is it that you get that right attitude? Okay. Some of what I'm going to say is going to work for some people. For some others, you have to come up with your own way of getting the right attitude. Okay. One of the things that I do, and I was not a fan of reading comprehension. I now am. And one of the things that I do is, whenever I see the passage, I just put my pen down. I just take a step back and I say, okay. I try to understand, okay, just the topic of the passage. Let's say it's a physical sciences passage, and typically I don't like reading about physical sciences, so I'm just going to look at that and I'm saying, okay, I am going to read about physical sciences. For the next few minutes, nothing else in the world is going to matter to me except for what I'm seeing on the screen. Okay, physical sciences, this topic, whatever is the topic in that genre, I am going to learn something about it. I'm going to read something about it. I'm going to understand something about it. And I am not going to be disturbed by anything else. My mind is not going to go anywhere. My mind is going to be stuck with this particular passage. Okay, I want to know what the author wants me to know. Okay, I want to understand that. I tell that to myself. Okay, before I even start applying my reading strategies, before I look at any question, I have to tell myself that, so that my mind is prepared to get the stuff that I need to get from the passage. Okay, and this exercise is something that you have to do. Now, in the e-GMAT course, we do similar thing. For each passage, we basically set your attitude right, and we repeat that same statement over and over again for each passage, that I want to know what the author intends to tell me. So I'm going to give my everything to this particular passage. Okay, nothing else in the world matters to me. And when you say these words to yourself, or whatever words work for you in order to get that attitude right, you will automatically start to see that you're more engaged in the passage. So you have to get this attitude right, because you need to be engaged in the passage. Only then you can do justice to the passage. One of the other things that could work on some people, and that actually has worked on some people, is think about that passage to be more of a conversation between you and the author. Okay, and you basically say, okay, I'm not just reading something passively, I am an active reader of that passage, and the author has written the passage, and even though the author is not sitting face to face with me, I'm not really talking to that author in real time, but he's written this passage, and that's his way of communicating with me, and I'm going to understand what is it that he wants to explain to me. So you can get in that conversation mode with the author. So that's another way of setting your attitude right. The third way that has also worked with some people is that you give author that respect, right? The author took the time to write the passage. The least I can do is give it my complete attention, my 100% attention, to do justice to the time that he has spent in writing the passage. Okay, so again, these are three ways. The fourth way, which is a selfish way, is if I understand this passage correctly, okay, I have the chance to answer at least three questions correctly. Okay, and that's going to get me closer to my verbal score. Okay, so if you keep that end goal in mind, that also will help you with getting that right attitude. Okay, do these pointers help? Yes or no? And tell me which one stuck with you. I mean, this may sound very philosophical. Frankly, reading comprehension, there isn't much to cover in concepts. Concepts are handful concepts, right? But tell me, but again, it's really your mindset that has to be set in the right way for you to ace reading comprehension. Okay, selfish one, pass it, summarize. Selfish one, how does one? Okay, nothing else matters. Okay, total focus and interest. Last one, in the conversation with the author. Okay, good. Make a note of these. Just write down in your scratch pad or wherever you're taking notes. Write down the statement that works for you. Okay. All right. Good. Very nice. Now, once you have the attitude right, okay, you immerse with that attitude. You give your 100% to the author. You get immersed in the passage. Now we come to the reading strategies. Okay. Reading strategies. The first reading. Now, one more thing that I'm going to tell you is, initially, when I asked you for your approach towards RC, a number of you said we read fast, right? From this point on, you are not going to hear the word fast at all. Fast is not going to be in your dictionary. Instead, we are going to focus on the word slow. RC cannot be aced by fast reading. And I know this may come as a major shock to you. For how many of you is this coming as a major shock? Okay, for about, I'd say 40% of the class, 45% of the class, yeah. RC, you cannot go fast. You have to go slow. Only if you go slow, you would be able to understand the passage correctly. Okay, and for the time being, let's just keep timing related questions on the side. I'll make one more statement here. I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you talking about removing the word fast from your dictionary when it pertains to reading comprehension and asking you to incorporate the word slow if the strategy was not successful. This strategy has worked with thousands and thousands of students. Okay, utilizing the slow reading strategies on RC, they've been able to get to that 90 percentile score. Okay, that's the reason why I'm sitting in front of you here saying so confidently that you need to remove the word fast from your dictionary as it pertains to reading comprehension. Okay, so we'll talk about, now again, this is not going to come easy, right? Nothing worthwhile comes easy. Okay, that's another thing which you have to understand. Okay, you have to put in the effort. I'm going to guide you to what effort you need to put in. I'm going to give you the tools, guide you towards the tools that you require. Ultimately, you have to invest your time there. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the reading strategies and why is this word slow so important before I even start talking about reading strategies, is because each of these strategies, as I mentioned, as I explained to you, you would get this doubt in your head that, okay, how am I supposed to do this if I have to read a passage in 2 minutes? And that's why I want you to remove that misconception. You are not required to read the passage in 2 minutes. Okay, and I'm going to tell you that. Okay, but first, let's just take my word for it right now. Okay, that slow reading is the way to go. And then I'm going to give you, once I explain the reading strategies to you, I'm going to give you measures of how is it that you can implement these strategies in the timed environment of the test. Okay, so the first and the foremost thing is you understand the sentence structure. Now, a typical RC passage contains one or more paragraphs, right? It contains, each paragraph contains one or more sentences. Each sentence contains one or more ideas, right? So when you're reading an RC passage, you shouldn't read the sentence at the sentence level. You need to break down the sentence into smaller chunks, okay? And that's what we talk about, and that's what we mean by understand the sentence structure. You have to read the sentence slowly to break it down into the multiple ideas that the sentence expresses, and you need to understand those ideas. How many of you are aware of the strategic pausing technique that we teach for sentence correction? Okay. You guys are not aware. Only 30% of the class is aware of those strategies. Okay. Strategic pausing is a strategy that we follow, that we teach for sentence correction. Okay, and again, sentence correction, the basic level of the sentence is it's a sentence level thing, right? So we teach you how is it that you pause in order to understand the meaning of the sentence. So you strategically pause. You don't pause after every word, right? You strategically pause after a set of words, and we teach you how is it that you should pause, where is it that you should pause, and we have this full course of master comprehension, whose sole purpose is to teach you how do you strategically pause. Okay, and those are the strategies that you need to apply over here. Understand sentence structure, and that's the reason the first fundamental skill that we teach you once you enroll for the e-GMAT course. If you're preparing for reading comprehension, the first fundamental skill that we teach you is how do you strategically pause, how do you understand the sentence structure, and that's done through master comprehension course. The second one, once you know how to read the passage correct, how to read the sentence correctly, we ask you to pause and predict the thoughts of the author through keywords. Okay, what do I mean by that? By that, what I mean is, remember I told you that you need to be in conversation with the author. Okay, now when you are in conversation with let's say you're having an interesting discussion with your colleague, you always try to be, not always, but when you are completely engaged in that conversation, you do try to predict what the other person is going to say, and you do try to come up with your own rebuttal to that or your own examples for that. Now, you don't need to do the second part over here, right, in the context of reading comprehension, but the first part you definitely need to do, and that is, you need to, let's say the person says, moreover, right? So then you know, okay, now my colleague is going to give me one more example of what he's going to add another example there. Let's say if your colleague says, however, so now you know that, okay, he's now going to give me something else or some other opposite thing or a contrast thing, right? Let's say, for example, you're reading the passage and the author says that the author presents positive aspect of certain thing, and then he says, having said that. Now, what do you think the author is going to say next? And I want you to pause after that. The author has said something positive in the previous sentence, and now he says, having said that. What do you think the author is going to say next? He's going to give something negative, right? Now, the interesting thing over here is, the author, you have access to what he says next, but I want you to pause here. I don't want you to read this right away. I want you to assimilate whatever he has said. He said something positive. Now he's saying, having said that, I want you to pause at that point. I want you to assimilate. Okay, now the author is going to give me something negative. With that impression in your mind, now you read what he has said next. When you do that, now you may ask me, why are you asking us to pause when the information is already given over here? The reason for that is I want your understanding to be 100% solid. When is your understanding 100% solid? When you have certain hypothesis and that hypothesis comes out to be true, you get that much more conviction. In this case, it's not even a matter of hypothesis. If it's having said that, then and the person has given a positive thing, this plus having said that means that there is going to be something negative. There is no, this is very almost mathematical here, right? If it is moreover, then it's going to be an additional point. If it's however, it's going to be a contrast. So I want you to get that conviction that, okay, this is what the author is going to say next. Now when you read what the author is indeed saying, you will really be able to understand completely what the author is saying. Okay. Okay, I have a question here. There's something on with the mic. When you raise your tone, the sound quality really declines. Words are not clear. It may be something at your end, and maybe because the internet connection over here is fine. Let's see. Is my voice clear, everyone? Because if it's not, then it's probably again, a couple of you may be having an issue, but it could be because of your internet connection. Okay, because if majority is okay, then I think it's really your internet connection there. I can check over here. Yeah. All right. So let's carry further over there. Okay. Let me see then. Voice is blurrish. Now again, I don't know if this is representative of the whole class, and I would not want to waste the time of everyone here. Okay. Okay. Let me remove the video and then let's see if that helps. Okay. Let's see if this helps. Okay, is this better if I remove the video here? Okay guys, it's either no. Okay, mic is too close. Okay. Just 1 second. Okay, how about now? Is it better now? All right, guys. I am going to resume the video here. All right. Okay, so I've made the mic go a little bit, so I've put the mic a little bit farther away, so hopefully that will work. Okay, all right, so now let's talk about, so we were talking about predicting the thoughts through keywords, right? So now that that's done, so basically you have to pause, and you pause where you pause at the keywords, and that really helps you remain immersed in the passage. That really helps you get that level of understanding that you need to have, because now what you think, that's what is coming out to be true. So you get that level of confidence as well. And that's very important, especially in the context of reading comprehension, when you have such lengthy passage to read, when you have such dense passages to read. Okay. And what you notice is that the strategies that I'm talking about here, they are geared around the very nature of reading comprehension, that it's dense, it's a lot of content. And that's why we are asking you to read slowly. We are asking you to break things down. Imagine if you have a pretty thick log of wood, right? Breaking that, so you have a thick bundle, right, of small logs. if you have to break that bundle, that's going to be a lot more difficult, versus if you were to split that bundle into the individual logs, that's going to be a lot easier for you into the, yeah. So that's what we are doing over here. We are breaking down that big passage into smaller parts so that it's much easier to follow along. Okay. The third strategy is summarize and predict what's next. Now, this summarization and prediction is something different from predicting the thoughts through keywords, because this summarizing over here is done at a paragraph level, or and again, it may not be very precise. This is just another way for you to remain engaged in the passage. The main thing over here is summarize. By that, what I mean is that after you read, as soon as, like, let's say there are 5 sentences and you've read 2 sentences, but those 2 sentences were so dense that you kind of, as soon as you move to the third sentence, you have that overload of information, right? So what I want you to do is, after the second sentence, I want you to pause and I want you to summarize what you've read in the first 2 sentences and then move on. So this summarizing is a very, very important point over here. So really speaking, let me get rid of my annotations here. Really speaking, the first strategy is on the sentence level, the second strategy is on the within a paragraph level, and the third strategy can be applied within a paragraph as well as among the paragraphs, right? So you can apply these strategies at all of these places. But really the key thing over here is that we are breaking the passage down into its smaller chunks in order to understand the passage. Okay. Do these strategies make sense? Yes, no. Which strategy is surprising? Because clearly you guys are not applying any of these strategies right now, right? Number 1 is surprising. Predict thoughts through keywords. The second one is surprising. Sentence level. Okay. All right. Good. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply. This was all theory part, and the theory part is done. Okay. Now we're going to apply these reading strategies slowly on a small passage. Okay. I'm going to give you a minute to read the small passage. Okay. And I'm going to, yeah, so read this passage, and then, well, I'm going to remove this 1 minute thing. I'm not going to give you a minute. I'm going to give you, you guys decide how much time you need, in the sense that when you're done reading the passage, I want you to click on yes. So can you all please click on no right now? I want everyone who's ready to read this passage to click on no, because that tells me how many of you are actively engaged. Okay. Now I'm going to show you the passage. Read the passage. When you're done reading the passage, click on yes. All right. Okay, so 80% of you have read this passage. How was this passage? Hard to understand, medium, hard, tough, confusing, easy to understand. Is it representative of what you would see on the GMAT? Yes, no? Based on your experience of the test? Yep, it is. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the passage, applying the strategies that I've just talked about, and then we take it from there. I'm going to compare. I want you to compare your understanding of the passage with the understanding that I'm going to give you once I read the passage. Okay. All right. Oh, here's the question also. So let's solve this question first. I'm getting the question. Just give me 1 second here. Yeah, go ahead and solve the question. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. So 55% of the class selected choice D, and that is indeed the correct answer. But okay, that's good. Let's now solve the passage. Okay, we're going to understand the passage one part at a time. Okay. Okay. Bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. So bordering on the extreme, one definition of ethnocentrism. I'm going to pause here. Okay, I'm not even going to read what's coming next. I'm just going to pause here. Bordering on the extreme. What does bordering on the extreme mean? Not typical, out of the ordinary, a strong position, edgy, not considering extreme. Well, it is extreme. Bordering on the extreme means it is an extreme thing. Okay, it is an exaggerated definition. It's an exaggerated thing. Okay, it is a modifier, absolutely. It is not a typical. Not typical is also correct. It is an extreme thing. Okay, now what is extreme? What according to the author is extreme? Is it the definition of EC or is it EC itself? Absolutely. One of the extreme, it is really the definition of ethnocentrism, that is extreme. That's what the author is saying, that the definition of ethnocentrism is, this definition is exaggerated, right? So one definition of ethnocentrism, so this definition that I'm talking about here is an exaggerated definition, okay? All right, considers it. Now, what is it? It is ethnocentrism. Considers ethnocentrism a schismatic, I'm not sure what the word schismatic means, but that's okay. Considers it a schismatic in-group, out-group differentiation in which. Now, in which, I'm going to pause here. Why am I pausing here? Because I know after in which, the author is going to give me some more description of this differentiation. So right now, I just want to understand what all the author has said so far. Okay. So the definition is extreme. According to this definition, this ethnocentrism is certain kind of differentiation. What kind of differentiation? In-group, out-group. Now, what do you understand from in-group, out-group? Difference between inside the group and outside the group. That is what ethnocentrism is. That's the differentiation that he's talking about. In which, now I read further. Now, what the author is going to tell me next is some more description about this differentiation, this in-group, out-group differentiation, in which internal cohesion, okay, let me change the color here, internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion to the in-group are correlated. So I pause here. Okay. How can you summarize the words internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, and devotion? How can you summarize these words? Internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity. And let me just remove your previous responses. Now tell me. These are describing behaviors, but a little bit more. What kind of describing behaviors? Traits of yes, not traits of in-group, but positive, good things to close people, absolutely correct. That's what positive attributes. Positive feelings towards people who are inside the group, because it's internal cohesion, relative peace, solidarity, loyalty, devotion. These are all positive emotions to the in-group, to people who are inside your group, right? So positive emotions towards your in-group are correlated, are linked. Now, what do you think the author is going to give you after that? Let's say I don't have any of this information. What according to you would the author give you after that? And again, this is where we are talking about that prediction part, right? The author talked about in-group, out-group differentiation, difference between the in-group and the out-group. You've already read that there are certain positive emotions towards the in-group are correlated. What would the author correlate it with? With certain other stuff towards the out-group, right? That's what the author is talking about. That's the kind of definition that I want you to understand. That's the kind of prediction that I want you to do. And again, this prediction is a very solid prediction. Why? Because are correlated plus in-group, out-group differentiation plus these positive feelings, it's almost a mathematical equation, if you will, right? If there is in-group, out-group differentiation that the author is talking about, the author has already given one part of it, which is positive feelings towards in-group, are linked, are correlated with what, right? That will be some other stuff towards out-groups, and that's what we have to read now. And let me get rid of this stuff here. Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so okay, so now I'm going to read are correlated with the state of hostility towards outgroup. Okay, so the positive emotions are linked with negative emotions, with hostility towards outgroups. And I pause here and see, because I had done that prediction, now when I'm reading it, I'm so much more ready to absorb it, right? I'm in that conversation mode with the author here, which are often perceived. Now, which is going to give me description of the outgroups. These outgroups are often perceived as subhuman and or incorporation of evil. Basically, these outgroups are considered evil entities. Okay. So overall, what the author is saying over here is presenting an exaggerated definition. Okay. According to him, EC. Now I'm shortening ethnocentrism to EC. EC. It's some differentiation for which love for your own people is linked with hatred towards outside people. And then essentially this definition is exaggerated. According to the definition, these two things are linked. Love for your own people is linked with hatred towards outside people. Now, how many of you had this clear level of understanding of the passage when you read it on your own? This clarity, how many of you had this clarity? Only 25%, less than 25%. Okay. Now I'm pretty sure that some of these 51 people who didn't have this level of clarity would have been able to answer the main point question correctly. Okay, but that doesn't mean you would be able to answer all the questions from this passage correctly. Okay, so again, you need to have, the reason why I'm showing you this is, again, our goal is that 90 percentile ability. If you have to get there, it means that you need to be able to solve difficult questions consistently. Okay, that's what our goal is. For you to solve those difficult questions consistently, you need to have this level of clarity. Now, granted, you don't need to have this level of clarity for an easy passage. Okay, but as you get into a medium, again, and easy passages are easy to understand as well. So you don't need to do so much of an effort to understand and a quote unquote easy passage in order to get to that level of understanding. But as the passages get more dense, as the passages get more difficult, you need to apply these strategies to get to this level of understanding so that you can solve difficult questions correctly. Is this point clear? Are you guys with me over here? Do you agree with what I'm saying? Because again, half of the problem, I would say 70% of the problem in reading comprehension is just understanding that this is the right way to go. If you do buy into the approach, then applying that approach and getting to that level is actually a cakewalk compared to just it's a mindset thing for reading comprehension. Not so much with sentence correction or critical reasoning, because there you have to master those skills. There are certain concepts to learn. Reading comprehension is more about mindset than anything. Okay. Now, once you set that mindset, you definitely need to have the right kind of content to help you gain that experience, to help you gain that expertise. Okay, now I need to remove this part here as well, because give me 1 second. Okay, now if you think about each of these points over here, presents one definition of EC. This is something that's given in the passage, right? This is something that's explicitly stated in the passage, right? So there is no inference to be drawn whatsoever. Indicates that the definition is a bit exaggerated. This is an inference that we drew from bordering on the extreme part. Okay. Now, per the definition following are correlated. This is a summary that we created. Okay. So again, in this one single line passage, okay, there are 3 different skills that you were able to apply. One is just identify what's given explicitly in the passage, draw an inference, and then summarize information. Okay. Now, even though the question that we asked you on this passage was just about a main point question, you actually drew an inference. Again, that's very important to identify. It's not that you need to draw an inference only for an inference question. No, you have to continually, as you're reading the passage, if your goal is to get to that 100% understanding, you need to be able to continuously draw inferences from the passage, because your goal is to get to that level. Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at the question. What is the main point of the author behind writing the paragraph? Now, there's a certain strategy to solving main point questions. And we teach all of that in our main point concept files 1 and 2, which are part of your free trial. Over here, the main purpose of the author, you always have to say, put yourself in the shoes of the author and say, if I provided all this information, what is the goal? What was my goal? Okay, and then you basically try to answer the question. To criticize a concept that encourages hostility towards people not belonging to the same group. Again, none of you selected that answer choice, and let's get the poll here as well for the choices that you selected. No, there were a few of you who selected choice A. What is the criticism here? There is no criticism. Okay, there is no he's not criticizing EC. All he's saying is this definition is He's not criticizing EC as a concept. He's saying that the definition that he's presenting, that definition is exaggerated. So even if you considered exaggerated as a criticism, that exaggeration was for the definition, not for the concept of EC itself. The other thing is, encourages hostility. He's not, the author is not encouraging hostility. And if you selected choice A, this means that you got into the trap of the words, because there are those negative words that have been used, evil, subhuman, right? So those negative words have been used, and that's why you considered criticism or encourages hostility as attractive terms. These terms attracted you towards this choice because of the use of certain critical words, criticism related words in the passage. So again, you fell into that trap over there. Okay, let's take a look at choice B, which was a very close choice, or which was a popular incorrect choice. To evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism while enlisting its various features. First of all, tell me, for those of you who selected choice B, how many features have been specified over here? When this choice says various features, how many features do you see of EC? Because whenever you select a particular choice, you absorb everything of that choice. You accept everything of that choice. Now tell me, when you're saying 2 features or 4 features, what are those features? List those out. And in our summary, when we summarized, were there any features? It was just the definition. So for those of you who are saying 2 features or 4, again, there's no definite. So even if it's definition of in-group and out-group, it's not a feature of ethnocentrism. When you say to evaluate the concept of ethnocentrism and while enlisting its various features, you're saying that features of ethnocentrism. There are no features of ethnocentrism in the passage. The passage is simply presenting the definition of in-group and out-group, or not definition, but the linkage between the in-group and out-group, right? So there are no various features. So again, if you were attracted to this choice because of various features, that means you again fell in the trap of the fact that there were so many different aspects listed down explaining the definition. You fell in that trap. The other thing that's wrong over here is evaluate. Whenever you evaluate, you consider the pros and cons of a certain aspect. Here, the author is not considering any pros and cons. The author is simply presenting one exaggerated definition. That's it. Okay, so there is no evaluation of the concept. Okay, so that's why choice B is wrong. Choice C, very few people selected choice C, 6 of you, to define the concept of ethnocentrism, which leads to hierarchy among social groups. Again, which leads to hierarchy? The EC doesn't lead to hierarchy. Hierarchy exists. When I'm saying hierarchy, even if you consider subhuman as a hierarchy, that hierarchy exists, right? All the author is saying is this exaggerated definition of EC considers these in-group people, considers love for this in-group people is linked with hatred towards out-group people, right? But he's not saying that the EC leads to any hierarchy, and that's why this choice is wrong. Okay, but if you did select choice C, then you fell in the trap of that subhuman or evil part leading to hierarchy, implying hierarchy, which is not the correct inference. Or the main reason why you would have gotten attracted to choice C was define. You saw that, okay, there is definition in the passage explicitly stated. So you said, okay, the author would definitely be defining it. No, that's not his purpose. And again, think about it yourself. If it was your goal to define to define a new concept, would you use only the exaggerated definition? The answer is no, you would not. If your goal was truly to define a particular concept, you would use a more acceptable definition of that particular concept. You won't use just the exaggerated definition. And again, for us, the passage is what it is. You can't say that, okay, maybe the author will provide it. No, the author has not provided it. Your question is, what is the main purpose of the author behind writing the paragraph, this very paragraph? Okay, and which brings us to our choice D, to introduce the concept of ethnocentrism by presenting a view on it. Now, introduce, that is a very, very good selection of word. Why? Because you can introduce, and again, do a role-playing exercise. Put yourself in the shoes of the author. You can very well introduce the concept of ethnocentrism by simply, by presenting a definition, and an exaggerated definition. That's an introduction, right? By presenting a view on it. What is the view? Exaggerated definition. That is what author's view on this definition is, and that's why choice D is correct. Okay. Now, tell me, why did you get this question wrong? Is it necessary to put ourselves as author even in inference questions? Again, it's really up to you. Okay, for main point question, definitely putting yourself as an author would make sense, because then you would ask that question: if my goal was to define the concept, will I do what you've understood from the passage, right? But then you don't. Again, I don't believe you'd have to do that for the inference question. Or again, it depends when you're reading the passage. If you want to put yourself in the shoes of the author, you can very well do that. Okay, so ignored the bordering on the extreme part, understanding the choice of words mentioned in the answer. That's why. Okay. Now I have, okay, now one thing that I do want to talk about is that if you found any time that you find answer choices close, that's not a, that's an indication that you haven't understood the passage correctly. Okay, that's an outcome. That's not the cause, that's the outcome. The cause for that outcome is that you haven't understood the passage correctly. Okay, and I want you to answer this question right now. If you had the level of understanding that we arrived at after reading the passage, would you find any of the answer choices close? No. And that is why when you need to have that level of understanding of the passage, so that you have a very sound, a very concrete way of rejecting incorrect answer choices and accepting the correct answer choice. Okay, that is the reason why you need that 100% clarity of the passage. Okay, so beyond this session, whenever you're solving a question, if you actually, even in this session, because we are going to be solving questions right now, whenever you realize that as you're reading the passage, the questions and the answer choices, you feel that answer choices are close, make a note of that, because that's an indication that you haven't understood the passage correctly. Maybe you haven't understood certain part of the passage correctly, but that is a very strong indication. And then you go back into the passage, review the solution that is based on these reading strategies, to figure out which part of the passage did you not understand. Okay, I have a question here. I got the bordering, the extreme meaning itself wrong. To avoid that, what should I do? You need to apply the reading strategies. Okay, you need to interact with the course, with the content which is based on these reading strategies. Again, as I said, this is a skill that you have to build. And to build a skill, a new skill, you need to have the right material, the right coach. Okay, and again, it's something which is going to come with the right kind of material. All right, so now we're going to go into question number 2. This passage appears to be an extension of the previous passage, but you don't need to bring in your understanding of the previous passage. Okay, so here is the passage, and I'm going to, can you please click on no over here? That just tells me that you are engaged in reading the passage. All right, go ahead and read it, and then I'm also going to show you the question. So here's the question that you see on the screen. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay, interesting. How many of you found answer choices close? How many of you felt that they were okay? Actually, if you felt answer choices were close, that means that you felt that okay, more than one of the statements is correct. Okay, all right. So let's go through this. And this is a very simple one. The color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people. What can you infer from this statement? Now select yes if you can infer statement 1, select 2, you know if you can infer statement 2. And why are you saying that 1 is the correct one and not 2? What is the reason for that? Why are we not saying that the color blue is indeed soothing? What is the reason for you to select 1 and not 2? Because of considered, absolutely correct. The color blue is considered. When you say is considered, this means that some people think that it is. It's not that the author is considering. Okay, that's a very, very big distinction. When the author is saying the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect, all he's saying is there is this group of people that think that blue color is soothing. Okay. Now, whether he belongs in that group, whether the author is in that group is something that we don't know from this statement. Author could be in the group or author could not be in the group. We don't know that for sure. Okay. Now, if the author said that the color blue is considered to have a soothing effect on the moods of people, and rightly so, then the author would have been part of this group. But right now, the way the sentence is written, we don't know if the author also believes that the color blue has a soothing effect. We don't know that. Okay, that's why it's only some people who think that the color blue is soothing. Okay, that's why some people is the correct one. Okay, now I want you to apply that similar understanding on this passage as well as we read it. So ethnocentrism and its canonical variants, so EC and some of its variants, are deemed to be intimately connected with xenophobia. And I pause here and I shorten xenophobia as XP. Now, when we say are deemed, what does that mean? That means there are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected. Only some people. Okay. Do we know whether the author thinks that? Yes or no? Till now, do we know, just till this point, do we know if the author considers EC and XP to be closely connected? We don't know if the author thinks that or not. Okay. All we know is that the author is in a reporting mode. He's simply stating that, okay, there are some people who think that these two are intimately connected. Now again, the kind of emphasis that I'm putting on these words are deemed the kind of emphasis that I'm putting on understanding what does the author believe, what does the author not believe, is the author is in the reporting mode or is the author in an analytical mode. Again, those are things that you have to identify as you are reading the passage. Okay, that's very, very important for you to answer inference type of questions or tone type of questions or whatnot, right? So again, that's why, again, answering questions becomes a cakewalk if you are completely immersed in the passage. Okay, and this is what I mean by being immersed in the passage. Okay, as you're reading the part, you're not worried about fast reading. And imagine, and tell me, can you do any of this analysis if you were reading fast, if you were skimming the passage? Would you even question, are deemed, is that something which the author believes in, or is that a viewpoint of some other people? You wouldn't even think about that. You would start to think about that if there is an inference question. And imagine the kind of analysis that you would have to do at that point, especially when you have so many answer choices. You have 5 answer choices. Now at that point in time, you have to read that answer choice, come back to the passage, and then see what information in the passage will help you figure that out, whether this is an inference or not. That is such a laborious task. And all of that you can avoid by making sure that you read it the right way. And how do you read it the right way? By learning the reading strategies. Okay. How do you make sure that you continue to get better at it? By utilizing solutions that are based on these reading strategies. Okay. You can't do this on your own. Okay. You don't need to do this on your own. Okay. You can do this on your own if you had infinite amount of time. If all you were trying to do was do a deep dive analysis of each and every passage on your own, you can do that, but we've done it for you, right? So utilize that information, utilize the time that we have already invested in it. Okay, all right, so let's carry further. A complex attitude comes sentiment structure involving aversion, dislike. Now this part over here is actually very, very heavy part. A complex attitude system comes sentiment structure. All this is saying is it's a complex system involving. So all of this part over here, I'm simply saying a complex structure involving what? Involving hatred vis-a-vis the strange or the alien. So notice what I'm doing. Aversion, dislike, and antagonism. I'm summarizing it in my own words by saying hatred. Okay, these big words, I don't want them to get in the way of my understanding. So I'm just reading those words, aversion, dislike, and antagonism, and I'm saying that, okay, this is hatred. Okay, they don't like these people. Okay, aversion, dislike, antagonism vis-a-vis the strange or the alien, and everything that the stranger or the alien represents. So all of this stuff is just a very wordy way to say that xenophobia is a complex system according to which it's hatred towards everything alien. Okay, that's what it is. Okay, some socio-cultural anthropologists, even so, this big definition over here, this all definition, all this says is XP is hatred for aliens. This is the skill of summarizing. Okay, you don't have to be bogged down by the weight of this this big sentence, right? You simply summarize it as you're reading. You summarize it as XP is nothing but hatred for aliens. Now you read further. Some socio-cultural anthropologists, so some experts, now the author is telling something about some experts, even considered, and I want to draw your attention to the word even here. Okay, think about, it's a very critical word. Okay, even considered XP and EC opposite sides of the same coin. Okay, so let's pause here. Look at what the author has said till now. The author has said there are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected. Okay, then he explains what XP is. Okay, then he says some socioculturists, there are some experts who even considered. Now, even if you don't read this part, tell me why has the author used the word even? If he's used the word even, what is he going to say? Based on what you have read so far, that there are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected, what do you think the author is going to say after he says the word that there are some experts who even considered? It's not compare. Think about it. Put it in the context of what we have already read. There are some people who think that EC and XP are closely connected. And then he's saying there are some other experts who even considered it's a more comparative, it's a more extreme thing. They go to that extent, they're actually connected. Not just closely connected, they're actually connected. So it's basically taking this to an extreme. That's what the author is saying. That's what the author is saying, that some people think they're closely connected, but there are these some other people who even considered. Now what you think that the author is going to say, and your prediction will be really very true if you put it in the context, is that they are closely connected, they are attached to one another. Opposite sides of the same coin means attached to one another. They coexist, not just closely connected, they actually coexist. If there is heads part of the coin, there has to be a tails part, which means that if there is EC, there has to be XP. That's what there are some experts who think that. Okay, but a few voices have cautioned that this need not be the case. But again, there's a contrast here, but there are few experts who are saying that no, they may be closely connected, but they need not coexist. You can't say that if EC is there, then XP has to be there. Okay, so that is what the author is saying in this passage. Now, in all of this, what do you understand about the author's view? What has the author said? What does the author believe in? The author doesn't believe in anything. The author doesn't believe in the fact, we don't know if the author believes that XP and EC are closely connected. We don't know if the author believes that XP and EC coexist. We don't know if the author believes that EC and XP do not coexist. Okay, but we do know something. There is one thing that the author does believe in. What is that thing? In this passage, there is one thing that the author definitely believes in. What is that? The definition of XP. Absolutely correct. The definition of XP. And why is that? Why does the author believe in the definition of XP? Because it's mentioned, because it's a fact. Absolutely, because it's a fact. He states a fact and he is a logical person, right? So the author absolutely believes in the definition of XP. All the other stuff that he is simply in a reporting mode. Think about it. The author is in either of these two modes, and he can be in these two modes in a paragraph as well, in a single passage as well. He could take any one of these two modes. One is reporter mode. Think about a news reporter. When a news reporter is simply telling you about what the weather conditions are, or some calamity that has happened, or some development somewhere, he's simply presenting it, right? He's simply reporting the news. Now, when he gives an analysis of that, why that happened, why certain attack happened, or something about a discovery that has happened, some invention that has happened, then if he's giving his analysis of it, that's when he is in an analysis mode, right? And that's the same thing with the author. The author of a passage, he may be in a reporting mode wherein he's simply presenting what other people think, okay, but in a nice manner, right? He's not just presenting fact about one thing and then a fact about another, an opinion about another thing. No, he's collating that information in a properly well-written passage, right? Or he may be providing his analysis. In this case, he's simply in a reporting mode. He's not supporting any one group. He's not giving his viewpoint. He's simply reporting it, okay? And for you, as you're reading the passage, it's very important for you to identify what is he reporting, what is he analyzing, what does he believe in, okay? And that's very, very important for your overall understanding of the passage, as well as for your understanding of, for you to answer inference-based questions correctly, okay? Now, given this, I'm going to show you the question again. I want you to take another stab at this question. Given what we have discussed, do you want to change any of your answer choices? And I am going to just write down the answer. So hold on one second. I'm going to write down the answer choices here. So this is about 33%. Oh, can't write down. then this is 35%, and then this is 21%. Okay, go ahead. I'll reopen it. Go ahead and see if you want to change any of your responses. Okay. So this number has gone to upwards of 60%. Okay. And definitely the other numbers have reduced. Okay. And again, look at the power of your level of understanding. If you have good understanding, the right level of understanding, you will be able to answer questions correctly. Okay. Now tell me, based on your understanding, how many of you find the answer choices close? Very important. Based on this level of understanding, how many of you find answer choices close? And earlier this number was 80%. 80% of you found answer choices in this problem close. Now only 27% do. Okay. So again, that is the power of, ideally I would have wanted 0% of you to say yes. But again, I know it takes a while to understand this part. Okay. So again, utilize this as a leading indicator. Okay, if you are finding answer choices close, that's an indication that you haven't understood the passage correctly. Okay, all right. Now let's quickly go through the answer choices. Xenophobia and EC are different facets of the same concept. Again, different facets of the same concept. Again, this is coming from opposite sides of the same coin. Okay, and this is not the author's view. This is, he's simply in a reporting mode. Now, the key to solving answer understand to selecting the correct answer choice. Every answer choice you need to understand, analyze what the answer choice is saying, and then you need to figure out based on your understanding of the passage if that choice is correct. Now, in this case, XP and EC are different facets of the same concept. We understood that, okay, this part is coming from here. This is a restatement of opposite sides of the same coin. Okay, and then we are saying, okay, does the author, so this is step one, and then we think, okay, does the author believe in that? Then we go to our understanding of the passage and we say, no, the author doesn't believe in it, right? Okay, the canonical, so that's why this choice is wrong. The canonical variants of EC are closely connected with XP. Now again, you go over there, intimately connected. This is linked with this part over here. Does the author believe in that? No, the author is simply reporting. That's a view of some people. EC and XP are not connected with each other. Again, this is not even in the passage. In some cases, xenophobia could be the cause. There is no causal relationship here. XP entails dislike towards the strange. Absolutely. This is the summary of the definition. This is the correct answer. Okay. I have a question here. Does even considered not give some indication on the author's side? No, not at all. Again, we talked about the implication of even considered. Even considered means that these guys are taking that a step further. Doesn't mean that the author believes that. The author is simply saying that, okay, the author is simply presenting, think about it this way. The author is simply saying that, okay, reporting that these people believe that they are linked. And now he's saying, okay, these other people are actually taking that linkage to an extreme level, right, to another level. So he's not presenting his take on it. Okay, he doesn't say whether, you know, he believes in that or not. He's not saying that at all. B is not the answer because that's not what the author believes in. The author is simply presenting that as are deemed to be intimately connected. He's just presenting somebody else's view. Okay. All right. All right. So tell me one thing. I need to take a view of, take a vote here. We have one full length passage now to go over, okay, but I do have detailed solutions for that passage. Or if you want to know how is it that you can prepare, how is it that you can learn these reading strategies, what is it that you would want to do? Press yes if you, actually let's do both. We'll go through the passage. I don't want to short circuit anything. Let's go through this passage. Solve this passage, try to apply the reading strategies here. Okay, go ahead. Rather, let me ask you this question. Are you in a mood to solve this passage? Yes or no? Good. If you are in the mood to solve the passage, then let's do that. All right, so here's the passage. I'm going to, so click on no over here. That means you haven't as yet finished reading the passage. Once you are, once you're done reading the passage, I will show you the questions. Okay. All right. Okay, I'm going to show you the questions now. Here is question number 1, and I'm going to remove the Q&A part just for a little bit, okay, so that I can fit in the passage here if you need to refer back to the passage. Here is the passage. Okay, here's question number 1, and I'm going to get the poll for this question as well. Go ahead. Okay, a few more seconds, then I'm going to share the second question. Here's question number 2. Alright, I'm going to show you question number 3 now. Here's question 3. Here's the poll. Okay, I'm going to give you question number 4 now. I'm going to give you question number 5. Go ahead. All right, I'm going to end the poll now. Okay. Let's change our stuff here, bring back the way things were. So tell me, how was your experience? Tell me your experience with regards to reading the passage slowly, answering questions, your confidence level. Tell me about that. The answer choices seemed difficult, the passage was not difficult. And that happens that when you don't have a complete understanding of the passage, that's when it happened. Okay. Felt like you understood more than before, better than before the webinar. That's really good. And you know, this is the, now how many of you tried to read slowly? And again, I'm using the word tried because I know that it doesn't come easily. Okay, you have to work on it. Okay, good, very nice, very nice. And that's the kind of thing that I want you to continue beyond this session. Okay, so let's solve this question. Let's read the passage together. Okay. F&M, I'm just shortening them, assert that medical research could be improved by a move toward larger, simpler clinical trials of medical treatments. Okay, so there are two things that he's talking about. One is larger and the other is simpler. There are two things. Okay, that's something which you need to make a note of. Okay, trials of medical treatments. Currently, now the author is talking what happens today. Currently, researchers collect far more background information on patients than is strictly required for their trials, substantially more than the hospitals collect. Now tell me, why has the author compared this with hospitals? Why do you think the author has compared the amount of data collected with what the hospitals collect? What is the benefit of that? What is his purpose? What does he intend to show by this comparison? Absolutely, because you expect the hospitals enough to gather enough data already. Absolutely. That the hospitals is where people go to get treated, right, for certain ailments, right? So what they're saying is that hospitals is where your surgeries are done, you are given care and all that stuff. Hospitals don't collect as much data as these medical as these trials collect. Okay, so that's why he's comparing that to give us the extent of how much more data the researchers collect. Okay, now, but thereby escalating costs of data collection, storage, and analysis. Now, what is the negative? What is the downside of collecting a lot more data? It increases the cost of data collection. It increases these three costs: data collection cost, storage cost, and analysis cost. Okay. Although, now when you see although, means that the author is going to give a contrasting information. What is the contrast that the author is going to provide? Before you even start reading the contrast, remember strategy number 2, you need to pause and predict the thoughts through keywords. Now, given that the author has presented a negative of collecting that much data, what is he going to talk about next once he says the word although? It's not just data collection. What is he's going to give a positive for collecting large amounts of data. Absolutely, he's going to give a positive. Although limiting information collection could increase the risk that researchers will overlook facts relevant to a study, so that's the negative that he's presenting, that yes, if you limit the amount of data collected, that will increase, that may mean that the researchers will overlook facts. Fraser and F&M contend, they agree that such risk, never entirely eliminable from research, would still be small in most studies. So what he's saying is yes. What they're saying is yes, there is going to be that risk, but this risk, which is actually never removable, you're always going to carry that risk, is actually going to be pretty small in most studies. Again, he's not saying in all studies. F&M are saying in most studies, the risk is going to be small. Only in research. Now again, this is where, when you've read the word most, he's talking about most studies, that the risk is going to be small in most studies. Only in research on entirely new treatments are new and expected variables likely to arise. So essentially what he's, and we'll move on to the next paragraph in a bit after we summarize all of this. So essentially he's talking about larger and simpler trials. He's talking about too much data is being collected, more cost. Negative of collecting less data is risk of losing some facts, but can't be removed, and risk is small in most studies. Okay, so essentially overall benefits of a simpler trial have been explained. And the simpler trial, essentially what he's saying is, so all of this collecting too much data. Okay, if you start collecting less data or just the required amount of data, then you're going into more simpler trials. Okay, so again, that's why associating what he's saying with regards to his overall thing, that larger and simpler, is very, very important. Okay, now the next one. Oh, we actually missed some part of the passage here. Okay, are likely to arise. Okay, this part is arise. So what he's saying is, only in research on entirely new treatments are new and expected variables likely to arise. Now tell me one thing. if he's saying, and this is an inference that I want you to draw, if the author is saying that F&M are saying that the risk will be small in most studies, and then the author says only in research on entirely new treatments are new and unexpected variables likely to arise. Now, these researches, are they done on, so essentially what are the most, are only, when he's saying that in most studies the risk is going to be small, but in these new and unexpected, in these entirely, the studies for entirely new treatments, he's saying that the risk will be higher, right? But you can combine these two informations and say that most studies are not about new treatments. Is that correct? Can you draw that inference? Based on this part over here, that risk is small on most studies, and based on the fact that only in research on new treatments, new and unexpected variables are likely to arise, you can actually conclude that most studies are not done on new treatments. Okay, and again, these inferences are very important when you get to solving questions, because the author, the test maker, can create an inference question or can create an inference question in this case very easily looking at these two bits of information. Okay, now what question you get in the passage in the exam depends on the question selection, depends upon how you're doing in RC, because you can, for a particular passage, you can have easier questions, you can have more difficult questions. Okay, and that's why your read of the passage, your understanding of the passage needs to be independent of the kind of questions that you're going to see. Okay, if you have good understanding, that 100% understanding of the passage, no matter what question is thrown at you, you will be able to solve it. Okay. All right, now let's read next. F&M proposed not only that researchers limit data collection on individual patients, but also that researchers enroll more patients in the clinical trials. Now tell me, there were 2 points that the author was discussing, larger and simpler trials. What is this paragraph about? Is this paragraph about simpler trial or larger trial? Larger trial, absolutely. Now look at what we are doing. And this, again, these reading strategies, they work well only on passages that are written in the right manner. If you have loosely connected data points in a passage, which means that if the passage is not written properly, then these reading strategies will not work. That's for sure. Okay. But GMAT passages are very, very well written. The authors of GMAT passages are very good writers. Okay, when I say writers, they're very good authors. They apply the writing strategies that we are utilizing to create reading strategies. Okay, so the author started off with larger and simpler. Now he's already explained about the simpler part of the trial. Now he's coming on to the larger. He's talking about the larger part of the trial. That you enroll more patients in clinical trials, thereby obtaining a more representative sample of total population with the disease under study. So again, now he's talking about that we need to get more people in the trial so that you get more representative sample. And again, this is what F&M is saying. Okay, now often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied. Now he's explaining what is being done currently. A treatment judged successful under these ideal conditions. What are the ideal conditions? That patients have no other ailments except for the ones that are being studied, can then be evaluated under normal conditions. Now, what do you infer? What do you infer from this information about what the normal conditions are? And again, all of this analysis needs to be done when you're reading the passage. What do you infer? What's the difference between ideal and normal conditions in the context of this paragraph? Patients can have secondary ailments because that's the more representative situation, right? If there is a trial for, let's say, diabetes, in real life, a person who has diabetes may also have hypertension or may also have thyroid issues, right? So you can't just say that, okay, I'm going to treat only people who have diabetes. Again, all the hormones are all connected with one another, right? So again, normal is you can have more than one ailments. Ideal is that you are doing it in a very pristine condition where you just have one variable, which is that one disease, right? So again, you need to draw such inferences. So, and after you read the passage, you basically, so after you read that part of the paragraph, you then summarize it. What features are we talking about here? Collect less data, increase the size of the trial, which would lead to getting more representative sample. Currently, what is being done? Study includes patients with only disease, then ideal conditions. Treatment passing these ideal conditions will then be tested for normal conditions. So essentially over here, benefits of a larger trial are being explained. Okay. All right. Now, I do have some comments in the Q&A part that, okay, what level of notes do I need to take? Again, that's purely dependent on you. Initially, when you are learning the process, I would say take detailed notes, and these are detailed notes. These are very detailed notes, okay? But as you start to get a handle of this, as you start to get more comfortable, you will automatically realize that you're taking more shorthand notes. You are utilizing abbreviations, you're utilizing different let's say this leads to this, or again, you will realize that you're starting to take much more concise notes. Okay, and that's absolutely fine. You can do diagramming of the passage. For example, we are talking about larger and simpler trials, so you could start off with, okay, so the author is talking about larger trials and then simpler trials, and then as you are going along, you're basically writing down the points as they fall under. Okay, so again, how you take notes is completely dependent upon what works for you. For some people, writing text works, absolutely fine. For some people, diagramming works, absolutely fine. For some people, I wouldn't recommend keeping things all in your mind, because then again, you are overloading it. Okay, you need your mind to be free to do analysis. Okay, that's why you write down the things, so that your mind, because your notes can't do the analysis, it's your mind that can do the analysis, right? So you much rather utilize your notes, your hands to write down the notes, and then your mind to think about analyzing those notes. Okay, all right. Now the last one, broadening the range of trial participants. So the author is continuing on with that same thought about the larger trial. F&M suggests would enable researchers to evaluate a treatment's efficacy for diverse patients under various conditions, and to evaluate its effectiveness for different patient subgroups. Okay, so again, the author is now presenting another advantage of doing the larger trial, that it's different patient subgroups, not just the representative thing under normal conditions, but also you will be, and then he's giving an example of that for a progressive disease, it may vary, the treatment for a progressive disease may vary according to the patient's stage of disease, right? And again, patients' ages may also affect a treatment's efficacy. So again, if you have a much larger test case there, you will be able to address not just the treatment's efficacy for a stage. You can also see a staged thing, that okay, in various stages of the disease, how effective the treatment would be. Okay, so that's what the author, so again, he's presenting another benefit of doing a larger trial. Okay, one benefit was the normal versus the ideal conditions, and the other one is basically the figuring out the treatment according to the progressive disease and just different patient subgroups based on different ages. And again, he's given these two as an example. One is the progression of the disease itself, and the other is the variable with regards to the age of the patient. Okay, now overall, again, the passage presents proposal for improvements in the medical research. There's not much risk that the author is, and then will reduce cost. Current scenario has been explained. The simpler trial is collect less data. It's going to reduce the cost, not much risk. Larger trial is obtain more representative sample. It will give efficacy information based on variables. Two examples have been presented, and the current scenario is explained. Now tell me, did you have this level of understanding of the passage when you read the passage? This clarity. About half of the class did. Okay. All right. Which part did you not? For those of you who had this level of understanding clarity, really good. Okay. For those of you who did not, Tell me which part did you not understand, or where did you have problems inferring information? Did you have problems connecting information? I think those are the questions that you have to answer. And then you look at the solutions that are based on these reading strategies. And then you see, okay, I missed out on this part. Okay, how do I make sure that I don't miss out on this part? And that's why the detailed solutions are so very important. Okay. All right, the passage is primarily concerned with, this is the main point question. And again, there are, if you go back to the summary, two-pronged proposal to improve medical research that has been explained over here. So really the correct answer, let's get to all the, choice D is the correct answer, and let's get the poll here as well. This question, I believe many of you answered correctly. And I want you to keep a tally of how many questions you answered incorrectly so that you can put in that in the poll. So choice D was selected by 64% of you. Choice C was another popular choice. So let's look at choice C. Evaluating an analysis of certain shortcomings of current medical research practices. Now see, again, evaluating means pros and cons. Okay, he is not talking about pros and cons of deficiencies of current practices. Okay, he is presenting certain disadvantages, but then that's not his goal. His goal is not to present analysis of evaluating an analysis of shortcomings. That's not what his goal is. He's presented certain disadvantages of how things are being done here, but again, the passage is primarily concerned with giving proposal for how medical research should be done. Okay. Now, choice E was another one, explaining how medical researchers have traditionally conducted clinical trials and how such trials are likely to change. Now, again, traditionally, yes, but likely to change, again, he's giving proposal. Okay, now whether that proposal is accepted or not, we don't know. Okay. The other thing is that in terms of current practices, he's presenting that just to draw a comparison, but that's not what his goal is. Okay, his goal is to give you what FNM think in terms of in terms of improving the medical research. Okay, all right. Choice D, describing proposed changes to the ways in which clinical trials are conducted, and that's exactly right, proposed changes, and he's describing them as well. Okay, let's look at question number 2. Which of the following can be inferred from the passage about a study of the category of patients referred to in the lines, often researchers restrict study participation to patients who have no ailments besides those being studied? And again, you have to, before you even start looking at the answer choices, you have to assimilate, you have to make sure that you understand what this what this part of the passage says. And because you have already done the analysis, you've already understood the passage, you won't need to spend much time on this. So essentially what we have to figure out is what can be inferred about the studies in which only those patients are selected who have no other ailments. Remember, this was the discussion about ideal versus normal conditions, right? So that's what the author is talking about, and what is the benefit of doing it. So again, he's proposing do a larger trial, so that you can simulate more of normal conditions, so that you don't have to do 2 trials or multiple trials. You can get all the data in a single trial itself. So can you do that revision of your understanding of the passage before you go further? Okay, so again, this is what we are saying. The results of such study are very limiting, only cover ideal conditions and not normal conditions, right? So that's what we are just recollecting what we understood. Now we take a look at each of the answer choices. Its findings might have limited applicability, and that is absolutely correct. That's what it is. The findings from the study, which only simulates ideal conditions, have limited applicability. That is absolutely correct. All the other choices are actually incorrect, and let's look at why they are incorrect. Choice B. Now again, cost was mentioned. This part talks about the expensive. Cost was mentioned with regards to doing simpler trials. This sentence is with regards to doing larger trials. So again, over here, students, who's 4 of you who selected choice B, you just understood you didn't understand the passage properly. Okay, you were just skimming on the surface, and that's why you ended up selecting this choice. It would be the best way to sample the total population of potential patients. Again, we are not talking about, it's actually absolutely opposite, because according to this one, according to this choice, you are saying that it would be this by doing the by selecting patients who only have the ailment that is being studied, you are creating the best representative sample, which is absolutely opposite to what the author is saying. It would allow researchers to limit information without increasing the risk that important variables could be overlooked. Again, this is from the simpler trials aspect, not regarding the larger trials. And again, that's why it's important. Look, the answer choices, the way they have been created, they are picking up information from different parts of the passage. Now, all the information, this information seems to be very familiar to you because you've read the passage. But if you don't put the right information in the right category, then you will end up getting confused that, okay, why this also seems correct. The author did say this, but then you have to put it in the context of what the question is. Okay. Its findings would be more accurate if it concerned treatments for a progressive disease than if it concerned treatments for a non-progressive disease. That not at all. This is actually absolutely opposite. Because over here, again, the other thing is accuracy. That's not what we are talking about. The next thing is that by considering people only who have the ideal conditions, well, is not going to simulate the progressive disease part. Okay, so again, this part is wrong. So choice A is the correct answer. Okay, let's look at question number 3. So again, all of these questions, your accuracy has been less than 60%. It's between 50 and 60%. So these are, I would say, 650 to 700 level questions. Okay. It can be inferred from the passage that a study limited to patients like those mentioned in lines often researchers restrict, blah, blah, would have which of the following advantages over the kind of study proposed by Fraser and Mosteller. Now, this question is actually, what it's saying is, what is the advantage of the current way of doing the studies over the proposed way of doing larger study? That's what the question is asking you. Okay, so essentially over here, you have to understand that, okay, the given way, what is the given way? That you simulate ideal conditions. What's the proposed way? That you get more people. So again, you need to figure out the advantages of the ideal, doing the study in the ideal thing versus doing the study in simulating normal conditions. So let's look at the answer choices here. Okay. It would yield more data and its findings would be more accurate. Again, accuracy has not been discussed at all. It's really the applicability that has been discussed. Okay. It would cost less. Again, cost less. Cost is not the matter with the aspect of doing a larger versus a smaller trial. It would limit the number of variables researchers would need to consider when evaluating the treatment under study. Now, this is something which is correct, because if you have people simulating only the ideal conditions, then again you don't have to consider all those multiple variables, all those additional variables. So it is going to be that's the benefit of it. Okay. It would help researchers to identify subgroups of patients, and again, this is the advantage of the proposed study. It would enable researchers to assess the value of an experimental treatment for the average patient. Again, average patient is normal condition. So therefore, this is not correct. Okay. Now again, this is the kind of question for which you need to understand what the question is asking you. You need to have a good understanding of the passage. But once you have that, you may not be able to come up with the answer. You may not be able to pre-think the answer. And that's absolutely fine. You don't need to pre-think the answer for all the questions. As long as you have good understanding of the passage, as long as you understand what the question is asking you, it's okay to eliminate answer choices that appear to be wrong straight off the bat, and then come shortlist the correct answer. And in this case, that approach would have worked absolutely fine. There is no closed choice here if you understand the passage well. So again, the benefit of understanding the passage completely before you start looking at the answer choices is not only to understand, to pre-think the correct answer, but it is also in rejecting the, especially when you cannot pre-think the answer. Okay, in this case, pre-thinking would have been a little bit difficult. Okay, I mean, you don't have to worry about that because you have in your arsenal the tools to reject the incorrect answer choices. Okay. All right. Let's look at question number 4. I'm going to get the poll for question 4. Again, this was selected by 80% of the class. So again, why does the author mention the patient's ages? And just most of you answered it correctly. To illustrate a point about the value of enrolling a wider range of patients in clinical trials, and I'm not discussing this in detail because most of you answered this question correctly. Okay, for those of you who answered choice C, 6 of you selected indicate why progressive diseases may require different treatments at different stages. Again, progressive diseases was for a different purpose, right? I mean, over here we are talking about patients' ages, right? So it's really that particular variable, right, to figure out the efficacy of the treatment based on the age variable. That is what this was talking about. Progressive diseases was the benefit of, was the example for, was another example. It wasn't related to the age example. Okay, let's look at question 5. Now this is the most difficult question. According to the passage, which of the following describes a result of the way in which researchers generally conduct clinical trials? So this is basically describes a result. Which of the following is an outcome of the process used to conduct clinical trials? So again, think about it. There are two different ways over here. Okay, there are two different things that the author is talking, that F&M proposed. One is doing a larger trial, the other is doing a simpler trial, right? And he is presenting what is being done currently. So what we are talking about is that what is the outcome of the current way of doing the clinical trial. So you need to keep in mind before you look at the passage that, okay, the passage tells us that a lot more data is collected than required, which means that it's more costly. The second one is that it's conducted only in ideal conditions, so application to real life is limited. So you have this clarity in your mind before you start looking at the answer choices. Okay, so now let's take a look at it. They expend resources, and now with that clarity, you need to now review each and every answer choice. They expend resources on the storage of information likely to be irrelevant to the study they are conducting, and that's absolutely correct. It's talking about doing a simpler trial. So it's talking about current practice of collecting too much data and what negative it has. Okay, they sometimes compromise the accuracy, and again, nowhere in the passage has the author talked about accuracy, so this is not even valid. They avoid the risk of overlooking variables that might affect their findings, even though doing so raises their research costs. Again, this is incorrect because, again, as the author says, that the risk even exists for the current way of doing studies, because you can't say they avoid the risk. And look at the choice of word. What choice C is saying is that if you do if you do collect a lot of data, then it would avoid the risk of overlooking variables, and that's not correct, because the author is saying that the author has said that that risk is always there, so you can't avoid the risk. Okay, now if it said that it minimizes the risk, then again that could have, or it has it reduces the risk, then yes, then this choice may have been correct. Okay, but right now from avoidance part, this choice is absolutely wrong. Because they attempt to analyze too much information, they overlook facts that could emerge as relevant to their studies. Again, this risk has not been even discussed. Okay, in order to approximate the conditions typical of medical treatment, they base their methods of again, this is methods of information collection hasn't been talked about. And again, look at this is a very clever way of bringing in hospitals. There is some comparison in the passage. And again, here also there's a comparison with the hospitals. So again, a student may fall in the trap again, and that happens only if you're not completely confident about, if you don't understand the passage the right way. Okay, so again, overall, as you read the passage, you need to understand it thoroughly, you need to notice the linkages, and you need to draw those inferences. Okay, and again, it's important to keep in mind what is it that you need in order to get to that 90th percentile ability in reading comprehension. You have to absolutely master the method of reading slowly. There is no second thoughts about it. You need to do that. Okay, and you need to utilize data to power through your success. Okay, now I have kind of addressed the slowly part of the time test here. Okay, but really, overall, what I'm going to say right now is that because you are reading the passage that thoroughly, you need to spend more time, because you need to read the passage thoroughly. You need to spend more time on the passage than what you're doing today. Okay, all I'm talking about is essentially redistribution of your time. And what I've shown over here is that typically when you read fast, you are spending about 2 minutes on the passage, and then on an average about 1.5 minutes for each question. Okay, overall you take about 8 minutes per passage. Now look at the distribution of the time that you're spending, the proportion of time that you're spending in reading the passage in your current fast reading method. Okay, now if you do slow reading, the reading method that we are talking about, you spend 3 to 4 minutes reading the passage. And again, there will be some passages on which you will need to spend 4 minutes because they will be long. And again, this is after you have learned the process. Okay, I'm not talking about right now. Today, when you are learning the process, for the first 20 passages, you may end up spending 10 minutes or even 15 minutes on the passage, and that's absolutely acceptable. But once you learn the process, once you build that skill, what we are talking about is how much time is it that you will end up spending on a typical passage, reading so how much time will you spend reading that passage? And that's about 3 minutes, okay, reading the passage completely. Okay, now, but the beauty of that is, because you're spending more time up front, you are not spending that much time on every question basis, the time that actually multiplies. Okay, so because you have such a solid understanding of the passage up front, you will not need to spend that much time on a question by question basis. That is the power of reading the passage slowly. Okay, so essentially it is nothing but redistribution of time. Your total time over here remains the same, in fact even less. Okay, here it's 8 minutes, over here it's 7 minutes. So your total time pretty much remains the same. You're just distributing the time. Okay, does this make sense? Yes or no? Hello everyone. I'm back here. Apologize for this little um, problem here. So can you please click on yes if you can hear me clearly? Okay. Now is the audio better here? Okay. So where were we when you started to experience audio issues? Can you just help me identify that? Not hearing anything. So where were we when you started experiencing audio issues? Okay. Guys, can you hear me right now or no? Because it's turn on the voice. Okay, let me see. It's the right one. Adjust. Okay, how about now? Is the audio any better now? Yes or no? Can you please type in your responses here as well? Better? Okay, good. Okay, this doesn't happen at all. So, all right. So I'm on a different system right now, and I hope that it would be a lot smoother now. So tell me, where were we at when the audio started to go bad? Did we cover the part about the passages, about the initial reading, and that it's all about distribution of time? Did we cover that part? Timing concerns, slow reading. But were you able to follow along everything? Okay, explaining the speed reading. Okay. So essentially what we are, so I'm just going to summarize this, that you're not adding any more time once your skills have been developed. You're not adding any more time to reading to read the RC passage. All we are doing is redistributing time. By that, what we mean is that we spend more time upfront on the passage, which would mean about 3 to 4 minutes upfront on the passage. And then, because we have a good understanding of the passage, what this would lead to is that when we are solving questions, we wouldn't need to spend that much more time on reading the question, on understanding the passage. Okay, that's sorry, on answering the question. Sorry about that. All right, um, so really, if you comprehend the passage really well, you don't need to spend more than a minute on every question. Okay, and let's talk about certain people who have been successful in applying these strategies, and again, what do they have to say towards these strategies? Anastasia, who scored a 740 with a V39, what she says verbatim in her debrief is that you should read all the text, not only the first and the last sentence of each paragraph or any other way. As long as you understand the whole paragraph, it takes only 30 to 50 seconds to answer each question. And that's to our point that if you spend that more time upfront reading the passage, you will not need any more than a minute to solve each question. Moreover, the more you read, the greater is your skill. So I read all official passages which I found. So I read all official passages which I found in the internet, bought a subscription for The Economist. Each article I tried to assess from different points of view, read to understand, analyze each part of information and understand why it is given, and read with what e-GMAT calls the SC hat. Okay, so again, um, that is from the debrief, and again, feel free to look at her video debrief as well, and I'm going to share that with you after this, so once I go through all these success stories, a couple of them. Nishant, who scored a V41, scoring a 740, he says what you have to realize is that you have enough time to cover all questions, and that's a very, very important thing, and coming from a person who has been there, who has done it all, it carries a whole lot more weight. Do not stress about the timing at all. Take more than 3 minutes to read, understand, and comprehend a short passage, and 4+ minutes to read a long passage. And again, look at the fact that he's writing 4+. He's not saying that you need to cap it at 4 minutes or you need to cap it at 3 minutes. What he's saying is that
Your goal is to understand the passage, because if you don't understand the passage, then again you won't be able to successfully answer the questions. This strategy has an initial investment of time, but it is great when you deal with the questions. Using this strategy, I was answering RC questions 45 to 60 seconds flat, and that's the beauty of it. Okay. And again, if you take a look at the time management part of his uh, uh, the time management part of his ESR. The slow reading of passage for comprehension, as I said, does not take any additional time than your current method of speed reading. He's taking 2 minutes per question for an RC passage, which means about 8 minutes per passage. Now he over here read slowly for comprehension. Okay, and actually, if you do slow reading, it improves your accuracy to answer difficult questions and it builds your confidence. So it has a very positive impact. Okay. Dr. Rohit Singh Malan, he has similar stuff to talk about. Before reading and applying reading strategies, he scored a V27. In case of reading comprehension, according to his debrief, what he says is, I was forced to read the passage multiple times for the reason that I didn't understand the passage first time around. And that happens with a number of you. You end up rereading the passage. Every time you see a question, you go back to the passage and you are going back to the passage to enhance your understanding of the passage. And at that point in time, it's a lost cause. Why? Because now you are already struggling with that anxiety of not being able to solve that question. You're already struggling with that new information that is presented to you in the form of the answer choices, and you are now struggling with the whole nature of reading comprehension. Okay. Versus after he learned and applied the reading strategies, he ended up scoring a V41. The need to read passages repeatedly in both CR and RC significantly decreased. So again, you will be able to, again, all these three success stories, Anastasia, Nishant, Rohit, they are all talk about the exact same thing that we've been emphasizing on in this session. Okay. Now, how does a 90th percentile scorer prepare for reading comprehension? Okay, so let's talk about that. And I've mentioned a couple of these points here and there in the session. The first one is he or she builds the foundation skills. How do you read a sentence by strategically pausing? You utilize the master comprehension course. And here's the screenshot of one of the modules of master comprehension course. We teach you how the building blocks of a sentence. We teach you how are long sentences formed. How do you deconstruct long sentences? And then we teach you pause points. Okay, where are where all should you be pausing? Right. Today I was pausing at commas, I was pausing at in which, so again, these are the things that we'll be teaching you in this course so that you understand when you are reading the sentence, where is it that you need to pause. Okay, now after you build your fundamental skills utilizing the master comprehension course, you now would then read the passage slowly to comprehend it by going through the foundation block. Now, this foundation block contains reading strategies concept files. Okay, and in these two concept files, we go through each of the reading strategies in detail, explaining to you the basic reasoning behind that reading strategies. How is it that you need to implement those strategies? And then we have these practice files in which we ask you, in which we basically have you practice not just by reading the entire passage, but by reading small part of the passage. We ask you certain leading questions. We essentially are we train your thought process. Okay, utilizing these three practice files. And again, you're not going to see any even 10% of what we talk about here in any other course material that you have. Okay, so again, these are purpose built files are which are built to teach you how is it that you read a passage to understand its meaning. Okay, now once you build these foundation concepts, then you learn the concepts and the methods in the question modules in the RC course. And for each type of question, we first have the concept files, not just one concept file, two concept files, in some cases even three concept files. Then we teach you, then we have you do practice. Okay, so again, you're going to see this for main point, you're going to see this um, for inference concepts. Inference, there are three concepts, two practice files. And again, every time you interact with any piece of material content on the e-GMAT platform, you actually get feedback. Over here, you're getting feedback on how is it that you are doing the inference concept. This student did 100% of inference concept correctly. Okay, and look at the amount of time that he spent. These are 15-minute long files, but he spent 30 minutes on it. So he made sure that he's getting everything right when he's going through the content. He's not leaving anything for later, right? So he's going through the content in the right manner. Now, once you go through the concepts here, and the concepts are really also application based, which is again, as you're going through the inference concept files, as you are going through the practice files of inference. After that, you essentially go through the application modules in which you apply all these strategies together on these passages. Okay, and again, look at the amount of time on one passage. Each file contains one passage, and look at the amount of time this successful student has spent on doing RC application file 1. He spent almost an hour. How many of you actually spend an hour learning a passage or solving a passage? Yes or no? What is the maximum amount of time that you spend interacting with a passage when you are solving RC passage? What is the maximum amount of time? 15 minutes, 20 minutes? Yeah. In the learning phase, that's not going to work at all. Okay, when you're learning, you need to, again, you have to look at the amount of detail we were able to extract from a single line paragraph today. All that analysis, when do you draw the inference, how do you connect information, all of that stuff requires time. Okay, you cannot be just in the passage solving mode when you are learning the method. Okay, you need to have those files which are built such that it changes the way you think about RC, such that it tweaks your thought process. It basically gets your thought process in the right direction. It inspires you to make those connections. That is what you get from these application modules. Okay, and that's why you need to spend that level of time on them. Okay, now after you do that, okay, once you do that, then you go into Scholaranium. Okay, once you've learned the methods in the application module, you then go into Scholaranium to cement those methods. And frankly, you won't really need to spend a whole lot of time in Scholaranium because you would have already reached to about 70 percentile level after finishing the course. Now in Scholaranium, you come and take that 70 percentile to that 90th percentile by again solving the questions of the right difficulty level, reviewing the solutions, and doing a detailed strategic review of the solutions. Okay. So again, that is what successful students do. They focus on learning methods so that they can consistently solve difficult questions correctly. And they utilize the data to guide them where they need to put in the effort. And again, this is an article that I'm going to share with you. It's a very, very important article. Um, these are what we've done is we've basically reviewed about 300 some students, data for 300 students on our platform. And we basically saw that, okay, what are the characteristics of successful students? Because again, everyone has the same, almost similar level of acumen. Okay, it's really how you take that acumen to how do you brush those skills? How do you learn the methods? What discipline do you utilize, right? It's those things that actually make the difference. And that is what you're going to see in this article. Successful students, they leverage data. The system, as I said, we have done all the hard work upfront so that we can provide you with the platform that gives you feedback. We can provide you with the platform that gives you tools to build your skill in the right manner. Okay, it's up to you to utilize the platform in the right way, in the optimum way to get the maximum from it. And that's what successful students do. They basically take all the feedback point, and this is the data for SC course. In SC course, we give you about 87 feedback points, right? And again, the concept and the average scores that the concept scores and the application file scores that you get, they are, for a successful student, they are typically above 85%. For students who are not successful, these scores are really low. And I want you to take your time to go through this article that I will share with you. Okay. So again, focus on learning the methods, the right methods. Okay. So with this, we've come to the end of this session, and I'm going to share the PDF with you. And I really apologize for the mess up with my connection here. So, and I appreciate your patience. So, what I'm going to do is Rahul is asking me what do you mean by feedback points? Feedback points. By that, what I mean is that every 15 minutes, the system gives you feedback on how it is that you're doing. Let's say you're interacting with main point concept file, right? The system would actually tell you how much have you learned from it. Okay, let's say you're preparing for sentence correction and you're going through verb tenses sequencing file. The system will tell you that, okay, how well have you understood that, and you have to take that feedback really seriously, and you have to implement the corrective actions from that feedback. Okay. um, in some, so I have another question here. So again, just so you know, so you can put in your rating for the session and definitely give me the feedback on this webinar, and all the success stories that I shared with you. You can click on them and you can simply click on browse to actually open that up directly in your browser. I would definitely want you to go through these interviews and these debriefs. And again, believe me, it's a very um, our students really thank us for conducting these interviews, because again, it's one thing for me to say certain thing over here, it's another thing for you to hear that same thing in the words of from a student who has actually lived through that experience, right? So I want you to, I mean, these debriefs and these interviews really act as really are very motivational for students who are right now preparing, because again, preparing the whole MBA application journey, which includes your GMAT preparation, it is a pretty onerous thing. It does take a toll on you. Okay, so you need to continue to stay motivated along the way, and for that, these interviews are really very, very helpful. And again, if you have any questions, please send those to me at payal@e-gmat.com. We have a team of strategy experts who will definitely respond to you. Any questions that you have with regards to your preparation, we are all ears. So let us know how we can help you. All right. So what is the one takeaway that you're going to take from this session? Type that in the feedback poll over there. Read slow. Absolutely. That's what I wanted to hear. Read slow. Absolutely. Good. That's the way to go. All right. And definitely look at build your foundation skills. Okay. This is a skill that you need to build, and it takes some time to, it basically takes a bit of, not a bit, quite a bit of effort. But again, you've made the course. It's you who have to utilize the course. Okay. All right. So let us know how we can help you. And yeah, good luck. And definitely register for the quant workshop tomorrow if you haven't already. And see you next weekend. Bye bye. Good luck for your preparation.